want you doing that while you're at retreat only. We want you to do it every moment that you are awake and active.
The priorities, the third is the lessons that you're learning at retreat are to immediately go back into action 24 hours a day for you.
I can guarantee that you all will grow considerably from an experience like that. I mean, by going and visiting your vehicles.
It should shoot you up at least 16 inches.
And it will be good. It will knock you up to a different level altogether. But if you have done what your homework, such as to keep help the mind to become very intense so that it will grow, then it will shoot you up even higher. Can you understand that? Whenever you do that, if you do it. If you don't do it, and what we're going through now can do almost the same thing. But it's just kind of a shock there if we're able to do the task actually. Can you all understand it? Because if you don't know, you think it's what it's for.
I can't imagine what they could consume on the most part that you couldn't consume as a seafood.
Or booze or stuff like that. In other words, you might just go along with whatever they have other than seafood. And you can say, it's been a long time since I've had seafood, and I don't feel like it settles in the stomach very well. And booze or coffee and things like that, I would just say, I just haven't had it in so long, I'd rather not drink it. And you could even say, you really ought to get it up yourself. But it is a good part.
It'd be okay if you drank some milk. It'd be okay if you drank some fruit juice. It'd be okay if you
And cold drink.
hot chocolate or cold drink. I'm trying to enlarge the things that maybe you haven't had but might be on hand.
In other words, you can just go along. You don't have to stick to the same menu that you had while you're in the craft. If they have it, and they ask you what to have, say, well, it's been a long time since I've had some spaghetti. Frozen food. But, or you can, if they ask you what you want, say, how about chicken? In other words, they may want to pick something you like, and you can go from there. Even if they wanted to fix you a nice juicy steak, you can still have it.
Sure. Cut the fat off. Sure. Sure. Fix their food part if they'd like for you to.
Keep busy. That way they can't ask so many questions.
More things, the more you can be busy, the better off to be.
Of course, some of the, like if Lagodi goes in here and offers to fix it, they might think something strange. This is boy.
You know?
Well, we'll put it this way, Junoni, if it makes them happy for you to take it, take it. If anybody offers you something and it will make them happy, take it.
Or if they feel like it's coming to you and they want you to have it.
But we're not sending you there to get anything.
No.
Because we're doing okay. that's her choice.
Same thing, if she brought it up again, say, well, I don't feel like you do, but if it makes you happy, keep going.
You won't be around to collect this choice, whatever she wants to do.
Yeah,
If they have a
if they have a place for you.
If they don't, we hope you'll have some money in your pocket that you can find some hotel rooms. I feel certain that they'll find something for you. Unless you don't have a relationship.
We'll give you enough emergency funds if you get caught where you have to have a room you can take it, but we're hoping that they will invite you to stay with us.
If you remember the relationship you had, and you felt like they didn't like for you to stay, if you missed, then let us know about it. And report it so we can prepare for it and help you to. But if they do have a place and they want you to stay, it's okay.
Right, honey? What have you done? Excuse me.
Well, they may not be satisfied with that, but we'll talk to you about it later after we find out what we talked to you about.
No. Right. Well, we'll help you with it more specifically, but I think you can get it out of the way, get their eyes off of it.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't go home until.
No, I think you better write a note to Link.
I was just thinking the same thing. I'm sorry. You know I've always been independent. I've always felt like I had to be sometimes.
Well, first, Rhodey, you haven't caused anybody to be anyway.
No, if they tell you that, you can turn that around and say,
I'm sorry, you can't
My
blame me
absence
for
didn't
that.
cause that.
I'm sure it would have happened if
That
I
was
had
their
been
choice.
there. In fact, I would have made it worse.
That's right. You should be thankful I wasn't here all that time. They've been 10 times as worse. What do you think I'm getting out of here tomorrow for?
But don't let them put that on you, okay?
No.
Because it would have happened anyway. If they were capable of going that way, it would have happened.
Don't let them
In
blame
other words, you can't walk around on eggshells around somebody. And if they were going to end up in the same asylum or a stroke or something, it's something that started a long time ago. Probably nutrition. Right. And it would have happened whether you stayed there or not. It was just might have been a little bit accelerated, you know, but it would have been something else. So don't let anybody make you feel guilty.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's possible that some could make you feel guilty and that they thought maybe they could appeal to you on the basis of your responsibility here, you know, and your responsibility is exactly where it belongs.
It will be a test for you because you can say, I wish that I could stay and help, but I don't know that I can do it. I think I've just got to complete what I started. And if they want to get angry with you, then that's your test, whether or not you can be strong enough to make them I don't really know what good you could do by staying there.
See, they're turning that, in order to take that point of view, they would have to turn a positive into a negative. They're turning your visit into something that almost would have been better not happening. Where, in other words, you should feel like that your being there is something that you want to help them with and to be a positive for them, not something that is going to turn around and make you feel bad and leave a terrible taste. So, like T says, the reminder is don't let anybody put you down in this process or in this experience, or try to tell you where your loyalty belongs, make you feel guilty. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it. If you're forced to be put in that position, you have to, that's your only defense.
But then, let's say your father had a stroke. You might say, listen, I feel like it's nutritional. You know, it isn't to me. And have you tried getting in touch with a nutritionist or something? You know, in other words, whenever you're faced with something, try to analyze it in a logical way, according to the ways that it's taught. Don't respond on a human level. If they want to make you feel bad, don't allow them to make you feel bad. Come back and say, I am sorry that I did this to you, but I don't believe that I can be blamed for anything that happened. You see the difference there? Because you couldn't cause anything like that to happen. The individual chose to allow it to happen, and his vehicle wasn't in good shape to begin with. And I can guarantee it would have happened later on if you had stayed right there with him.
Even let's say that you have a child, or your vehicle had a child that was in the world, and the child went awry, or is in a period of experiencing things that aren't too healthy for the child. And they could say, well, it's your fault. If you'd been here, that wouldn't have happened. That is not true. It is not so. Your being there would have, if anything, the experience of your not being there merely accelerated their being put to the test of making their own choices. But you certainly can't be to blame for their having gone into drugs or into this or into that. So don't let them tell you that you are. This applies to any of you. It's just
Their
not so.
They would have still been faced with the same things, and their choice was, if they wanted to go into drugs, they would go into drugs whether they were there or not. If they wanted to drink booze, they would be into booze. And just because you weren't there, doesn't mean that's the reason they were into it. So maybe that's okay. Well, you don't want to say that's their choice. Say, I don't believe you can blame me. In other words, that sounds
Right.
almost cocky. You know, but what I meant was, I said that in order for you to understand better, but just to say, I just don't believe that it's fair for you to put that off on me, because I don't believe that was God. And it may have accelerated my going, but I just don't believe that I was caused to do it. And you all have to understand that, because it's a human characteristic to want to blame somebody. You all know how hard it's been for you all to get out of being blamed. And so you all, if your mother ended up in an institution or mental nervous breakdown, or your dad started losing it up, that still is not your fault, because that's the choice they made. If they had been strong to begin with, they wouldn't have done it. So there was a weakness there to begin with.
And we know what you were sent on a task to do. And you couldn't have done that task had you nursemaided them through those experiences. Nando, do you have a question?
Ask him what a cult is. Ask him what a definition of a cult is. And then if he can say, well, that's not what we are.
Well, you know what a cult is? I don't know if on your rounds as you go taking people to task, but if you down First Street you see people running, that's a cult. Anything that becomes a cultural trend, any group of people that start doing something that is a little different from what was being done previously is a cult, because part of the culture has changed their ways. But see, they don't even use the term that way. They use the term cult to slam you, a derogatory thing about people who have certain religious ideas. So it wouldn't hurt if the opportunity presents itself to straighten him up a little bit on that idea and let him know what you aren't, and because it might help relieve him.
In other words, usually a cult has rituals. They have some kind of what is it? Some kind of creed they go by. They worship a religion of some sort. And you all don't worship anything other than rightness and the right way. You cannot tell them that you are here doing a task and that you're using these vehicles. You can't go and do that. So what you have to do is just discount the fact that this is not a cult. We do not have religious services.
I know how I'd face it if he were my dad. And I'd say, look, I don't use some slanderous category about your job. I don't say that you're like, if he solicits insurance, I don't say you're an insurance hooker. I'm not going to use slanderous terms that you wouldn't like concerning your job, because I respect your job. And I want you to respect what I'm doing. And I certainly don't consider it a cult. And if he has any respect for you on that basis, those terms, that'd be the last time he would think in terms of a cult.
I really don't feel like anybody will give you trouble. They will be happy to see you. And they might want to know something, but I don't feel that you can, if they want to ask you questions about the publicity and all, you can say, this is all of that. There wasn't an ounce of truth in it, what the newspapers report. And you all know about that at home. And, but you don't have to go through telling them everything that the newspaper said was wrong. If they ask you questions, answer it, but just don't volunteer any more information.
If they put you on the spot about finances, for example, you might be able to go just so far as to say, well, we have some of the ones that are in the class who serve the function of handling our needs and seeing that bills get paid and things get purchased. And they handle that function because that's part of their job. That's their task with us. And it's the same for everybody in the class. It's the same for our teachers, that their needs are handled in the same way. And I'm saying if you get put on the spot, and like if they say, well, who owns the cars? say, well, I don't know. As far as I know, some of my classmates do, and we have quite a number of cars. But like they say, well, what about T&O? They own a car? No, they don't. We don't have a car. We don't have a thing in our name. We don't own a thing. We hope to never own anything. And unfortunately, some of you have to own things because they have to be owned. So usually the ones who get to own things are the ones that don't want to own it. But I'm kidding. But the point is, if they put you on the spot, I'm just giving you little hints in case you get taken off guard and you wouldn't know what to say. There's nothing wrong with letting it out if you're forced to, that you have some people who handle the financial needs of your class. And also, I'll go back to this point, it's kind of helpful if they feel like your class is not all in one place and not all in one town. That kind of could be dropped somewhere, even if the question isn't asked. R30. Wait a minute. They asked you if you were working. That didn't mean that your classmates aren't working. Oh, okay.
I've got lots of things to do.
Oh, I've got a lot of answers for that. You don't? Couldn't you justify what your in-craft people do and the kind of terminology that would be acceptable to them? You know, are these in-craft people, do they just have time on their hands? They don't do anything? They don't have anything? But this is why it's homework for you, so that you're prepared for a question like that, and you know how, if you're forced to have an answer for it. But we all have to, like in the quarters where I am, there are quite a number of people, and we take turns serving, taking the responsibility of food preparation, cleaning up the place, and laundry, and mowing the lawn, yeah, on and on, the things that in reality exist. And it's not, I don't think you're going to be asked the question. But if you are asked the question, then you certainly have all the same kind of answers that any good housewife would have. And because that's what all the in-craft people are, good housewives. And yeah, they say, well, why didn't you do that when you never could get you to mow the lawn?
Because you've got to get back and continue what you've been working on.
It's just the time. It's the time that I allotted. It's the time that I chose to allot for this. You take the responsibility. You take that this is your choice. This is your position. It has to be that way, because otherwise it's going to sound like their suspicions of the way they're looking at it might have some truth, and if you're looking at it that way, you're in trouble.
You can say, I don't want to give you too much of me at one time. You know, I want to be taking responsibility.
Yeah, little doses of extremely sweet things are very dangerous.
You're at your house, say, good, I've got lots of things to do.
You mean people at your outcraft tasks have asked you that? Well, the only reason they'd ask you is because it's a thing to ask. You know, they expect you to say, well, this ain't on the women's home bill around here. Bridge club.
Have a cooking class. Mow the lawn. Feed Bozo and Amber. Kill fleas. I can make a mean thing to say.
No, that is important. Sure, that would help them. In their eyes, it'd be living a lot healthier life if they thought you saw some TV once in a while, went to movies, and you didn't go around with your hands folded in a row. True. Yeah, buddy? Right. Everything by now.
Do they know that you have joined them?
Of course, he knows they don't.
Okay, then you've just been traveling around. In other words, did you call someone last year? What did you tell them? I wouldn't change it.
You could just be the vagabond that decided to surprise them. Well, whatever fits. Now, if they have come upon the information, then there wouldn't be a reason to deny it. Because we don't want you to get caught in circumstances where you can be proven wrong. That's right. You're going to have to. Sunudi? Only if you think it's acceptable. And they didn't find anything wrong with it. I'd wiggle out of that and say I'm just not into it that much anymore. I have kind of taken a look at horary and this and that, or whatever way you could wiggle out of it, because you don't want to get involved in doing their charts and that.
Or you could just say, I'm really not that good at it.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I might mislead you.
You don't want to make it a big thing or a major thing that you've been involved with, because
make it past tense.
yes, it could be past tense. And one good reason is if they did come in contact with others, family units of other class members who might be very opposed to astrology, and they say, well, Zenobia here was into astrology pretty heavily, so if she was, I'm sure the group was. Okay.
If they ask, you can say, yes, I was not studying. I never got very good at it. Cross your fingers.
Okay, Cody?
Yeah. Well, the last report we had, he's way away.
He's in Reno. Last report we had was that he was. Sure, because you don't know. You don't know.
Well, I know where he is because he's been in contact with, not your family, but I mean the ones there, the last we heard.
But see, if you people in a circumstance like this, see, let's look, Cody left, when Cody left, in order to justify his leaving, he had to take a very negative approach to things. Plus, he left at a stage in the class where he certainly the class does not resemble what it did when Cody was here, or what you all do does not resemble. So, in Branody's circumstance, for example, they might have gotten word from Cody that certain things are a certain way, and she might have to set things straight a little bit more. And they might say, well, that's not so, because he told me so-and-so. And say, well, I'm sorry, he didn't know what he's talking about. He may have seen certain things a certain way when he was in the class, but I'm not even sure they were that way then, but that's the way he might have seen them. Might have been part of the reason why he is no longer with the class. But in circumstances like that, you'll have to, you might be committed to straightening out things a little bit better. Anybody? Well, it'd be the same thing. You'll just have to be on guard because you don't know what Black Sody might have told her. And you want to set straight anything that comes to your attention that is not accurate.
I don't remember reading that she was in touch with Black Sody. Did we miss it? Hopefully, Black Sody hasn't told us anything, said anything negative about it. Now, getting back to the newsletter, Alex Sody will probably have the worst treatment of anybody. And I don't mean that they'll be bad to you. I mean, you'll probably be asked more questions.
Interrogated.
And the thing of it is, your attitude should be, I don't even know what all the fuss is about. You know, in other words, a lot has been made out of nothing, really, because it isn't unusual for sons and daughters to leave home and do what they want to do. And we really wasn't that close, you know, and I really didn't know that you would have a reaction like this.
When he said we really weren't that close, meaning you
and your mother,
because a lot of you weren't close with the very people who some years later seem to be so regretful of the fact that you weren't close, and now they feel more closeness than they did even when you were there. But give your couple of days there will rectify that.
And in other words, absence makes the heart grow fond. And just because you haven't been in touch, you are the most important thing in their lives, and the daughter or the son who is staying there with them are treated like old hats. And but as soon as you're there and they know that they have contact with you, it will all change.
It's the trauma that has been interesting to most of them. The trauma that they can share with others that my son disappeared, or I haven't heard from him for many years, and that has stimulated an interest that would not have been there otherwise had the trauma not existed.
It's like this psychologist from Montana, the one that's supposed to be writing a book. He is as qualified to write a book as a bozo out there. And your question, Alex Sody, would be, what in the world is he writing about? Because it isn't that much to write about. And all they're doing is just talking because he has an audience. And in a sense, it's almost ridiculous. It's like the Holy Grail, you know. Because Jesus drank some wine out of it, all of a sudden it's something that's been handed down. Or the robe that he wore that probably wasn't worth 38 cents, you know. and has no power to it at all other than what the individual
believe.
thinks at that time. And so in a sense, it's like you could have an awful lot of questions of what in the world do you talk about? You know, what does he talk about? Because I don't understand what there is to talk about. It sounds to me like somebody has to make some stuff up to be able to make some psychological truth out of it.
Alex Soto will be in a position where some of you also might be, where he's going to want to really keep his ear tuned to what information that he might gather that might be helpful for us to know about others and things they have said or things they have done, or that they might have joined forces to try to do this or do that. And as much of that as he can learn. Plus, he wants to, like T says, he wants to set straight certain things, like that they've made so much over things that didn't need to be so much made over. I don't know if you all know that a short time ago we had Alex Soto while they were meeting in San Francisco. We had last week with, Labor Day weekend. There was a meeting called by the network in Berkeley, and Alex Soto called his mother, called the desk at the hotel where they were supposed to be staying, and asked to speak to his mother, and called at 1:30, which we thought would be a break between lunch and the meeting that was going to happen at 2. And she wasn't there, but the desk said that she'd be back at 2 o'clock. And so he mistakenly said who it was that was calling, and that led them to believe that he would call back at 2 o'clock. Well, he did call back at 2 o'clock, but and in the meantime, his mother had received the message from the desk, but for some reason or other didn't want to answer the telephone at 2 o'clock. Instead, she wanted him to call back at 2:30, which the only way we could figure out meant that she wanted to get a tape recorder all set up and record whatever it was that he had to say, so that she could either make it a message in the next newsletter, or so that she and the psychologist could get off in the next meeting of parents and analyze this conversation from a psychiatric point of view.
Doesn't he sound robot?
Yes.
Doesn't he sound
Can't
like
you
he has
hear that
been
monotone?
brainwashed? You know, in other words, Alex Soto, your mother may say, "Why didn't you call back?" And you can say, "Well, I really called to talk to you. And when you wouldn't take my call at 2 o'clock, I thought you were going to record it and then say it for the group, and I didn't want to talk to everybody. I wanted to talk to you."
Because I thought if you just wanted to talk to me and not get involved, you would have answered the phone at 2 o'clock when you knew I was calling back.
And don't say, "Well, T&O wouldn't let you call back." Or they say, "What's the matter when they let you call back?" You say, "Oh, no, it was my idea because I knew what you were up to. Weren't you recording? Didn't you want to record it? So you could play it to..."
And if you didn't, then why didn't you answer my call at 2 o'clock? Because I tried twice.
In other words, turn around and say, "It was disappointing to me that you weren't waiting there anxiously to hear from me because I was anxious to hear from you." You know, say it back to make her feel bad because she couldn't.
You have a question? As much as you could without creating a circumstance that was suspicious or awkward. As much as you could gather without making it look really weird, or without making it look like you were sent on a news gathering mission.
You're there really just to visit. And if they want to volunteer information, absorb it. play it by ear, and if it seems right, do it. You know, let's use your mother, for instance. She has benefited from this experience. In other words, according to the newsletter, she's made a lot of new friends.
And she's changed her whole life. She has her value system, according to her, is completely different from what it was before. And she considers herself a much better person because of the experience.
And it may have, and you can even compliment her on that. And gee, this experience has made you a great person. That is, if you feel that way. You know, if you mean it, if she hit you on the head with a skillet or something, you might not say, boy, this experience really made you a good person.
Really made you strong, didn't it?
Or running. Oh, who's over there beside? Oh, Annie, I'll go.
This brings up something I'd like for T to correct if I'm mistaken on it, but because we haven't talked about it before. But if I was going to visit someone that I knew had been in contact with the network newsletter, I would make every effort to ask them if they would stop that their own relationship with that. Because simply from, there's nothing that makes me less welcome if I feel like the minute I leave, you're going to go talk about me behind my back with others who are in the same circumstance as you. That makes our relationship not a one-to-one relationship. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like doing something behind my back. It's like they mean more to you than my visit means to you. You're more honest with them than you are with me. If you respect me after I have visited with you, and we still have a mutual respect, then please don't share everything I have said with everybody related to this newsletter. I don't like it. I don't like the things that I say being exposed and printed and sent out for everybody else to read. It's
private. It's more private. Our conversation should be private, and I'm afraid I'll be more hesitant to talk with you if I know that you're going to broadcast everything that I said, that I say to you. I agree. I think it's you'll have to handle it in your own words. But all of your family are not with the network. Only a few are. And so I don't know that all of you, but I think
just don't add any to it. Don't any of you who aren't with them tell them about it.
No. If they bring it up saying, oh, we've got this better from the network or something, then you will know, because I think they will tell you. But don't bring it up like I said.
Unless they know that they have been in a relationship. If you know they have been on the network thing, and you've seen their names appear in those newsletters, if T feels like it's all right, then I'd do what I could to discourage a continuation of this kind of relationship that publishes the comments of information that they might receive. It's none of their business. I don't see any harm in it, in letting them know that you feel like it's confidential information, it's private information.
They may want to say, oh, guess so-and-so came to see me. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, but to tell you what you talked about and everything. Kind of
Yeah, you want them to share that they had a visit with you. You want them to, that's fine, but we don't care for them to try to figure out why you said this and why you said that, what your comments were, and publish them to go out to others to analyze and try to figure out what kind of common denominators we have here.
Now, you want to do this very carefully because they might think the only reason you came there was to destroy that network because T&O told you to do it, you see. So you've got to be careful and be very keen on how you handle it. And only do it if the door opens for you to do it.
Yeah.
Don't go there. Oh, by the way.
Because here again, it wouldn't sound right if everybody who had a connection with the newsletter, if all of you, if the word got back to the newsletter people that all of them said, let's sever the relationship. In other words, you can't tell someone that if you do not think they would be open to it. If you do not think that they would take what you said and actually sever that relationship. But if you suspect that when you walk out the door, they're going to call Nancy Brown or somebody in relationship to the newsletter, then I certainly wouldn't tell them that you want that your visit kept private. Because also they'll say, they also asked me to keep all this private, and as soon as that's quoted and duplicated so many times, it'll questions you might have on your homework. The homework, of course, being that you're trying to second-guess questions that might be put to you and circumstances that might come your way in this task. If you do it, if you're called upon to do this task, and we're sure that there are a number of questions that have come to your attention by now that you probably don't know the answer to. Hopefully you have tried to answer those questions. And first we'll take the questions that you weren't able to answer, and then we'll take the questions that you tried to answer, and you can use us as a check partner for your answers. If time permits us to go that far, hopefully you won't have so many questions, and it won't take too long. But did everyone get a copy of the report that you all made out the other day that had some questions? Did they go to both grants? Who wrote that up? Huh? Oh, no, you read to me.
They're not questions, they were things that we discussed.
I think that's what I'm talking about.
So it's about what to do if you're asked if you have a job.
Do you understand the answer to that one? Does everybody understand the answer to that one? If you're asked, most of the questions we're going to go over, you will answer only if asked. There are a few things that in your suspicious mind while you're visiting, suspicious meaning in this instance, we want you to try to be keen enough to discover where they might have a completely distorted picture of what's going on and your circumstance, and you will try to set them straight to a degree without getting into details that are too personal or too sticky. But this question was, what if I'm asked if I have a job? And the answer to that question was, I have had a job from time to time, but I don't have one at the moment, and I don't know if I will or won't in the future. And there were other questions similar to that. But we'll take your questions now, if you've got some goodies that you And we want you to, don't hesitate on the type of question. Don't think you're going to embarrass T and Doe by the question or whatever it is. Like, Mercody?
The question is, neighbors, where do I live? That's, at the time.
Where do you live? Okay. The answer to that.
Wait, see what they
Oh, yes. Well, we'll see what, if Mercody doesn't have the answer to that, who has the answer to that? Chano, do you have the answer? Chanodi? Well, where are you? Where are you located? Well, you could even, if you needed to get more specific, you could even, like just to cut it off, you could say, well, the particular group of people that I've been staying with are in the process at this very moment of moving to another location. Actually, I don't know where I'll be living. But in other words, the thing you have to avoid is we do not want pat answers. We don't want for people to be comparing notes of relative to relative or the newsletter or anything, and we don't want pat answers. But there are certain pat answers that are okay. Like, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that pat answer. That's a good one. Or, well, let's wait and see. There's a lot.
I'll tell you what you could say. You could say, I don't really have a permanent address, but I can give you a mailing address.
This is the best answer that T just said. I really don't have a permanent address, but I can give you a mailing address so that we can be in touch that way. Do you understand that?
And we will give you, we mentioned about your writing, their writing to you, care of General Delivery.
And we'll take the details of that answer up as individuals are ready to depart. We'll say, your place of mailing is going to be Oklahoma City, yours St. Louis, yours New Orleans, or New Iberia, wherever it is. And, but we'll take that up at the time of departure. Okay? Here's some others. Talodi?
I don't think they'll have that kind of question. They're not qualified. They don't even know what you've been studying. In other words, they might ask, where are your teachers from? And they say, well, I thought everybody knew where they came from. They came from Texas.
Well, they might say, they might say what makes you, what convinces you and the members of your class that your teachers are worthy of your attention. You see what I'm saying? They could ask something like that. Because if they have some bitterness in their crawl, which many of them, it's a possibility they might have, and particularly if they've seen all this derogatory information about, and false information, not only about you, but particularly about other cults. Listen to that. That was good. You could say, we're not like other cults. Start over. But they might want to know what makes you think that your teachers are, what do they know that is so worthy of your undivided interest? And I don't know why you wouldn't have an answer to that question. It would be very awkward for your teachers to have to answer that question. But any other?
What did you ask?
That's good. That's brief. That's.
They don't glow in the dark. They don't levitate.
Okay. Now, on just to go a little tiny bit further with that type of question, let's say they did ask Annie Odie that question, then there would be her chance to say, as she answered with that simple answer, and like T said, they don't glow in the dark. We don't have any rituals. We don't have any. While I'm thinking about it, back on the job task, if the question of job task came up, that would be also an excellent opportunity to say, we don't sell flowers on the street, we don't sell ribbons, we don't wash dishes in restaurants. Any tasks that people have had have been very pleasant tasks. You understand what we're saying? That would be a chance to dispel the notion they have about the kind of jobs that you might have. And here on this thing, where were we on what Annie Odie was? What's that? Yeah. No rituals. We don't sit in yoga positions for X number of minutes at the certain ring of the bell and so forth. Even though I, as an individual, might meditate from time to time and trying in an effort to get better control of my own responses. In other words, that's something that you have chosen to do. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, what's some other questions? What, Debbie? No,
I wouldn't go that much.
that gets too particular. Yeah.
Don't, by all means, don't let them know what type of work
Yes,
you are doing.
I don't do electronic work. I don't work with computers if that's what you're doing. You certainly wouldn't, because then you're just leaving a clue. You've got to be so general that you would not be leaving a clue should they change their attitude for some reason or other after your departure and decide that they're going to try to hunt you down.
In other words, if they ask you what you're doing, say, I don't work in computers.
No. We're going to mess you all up good. We brought you together straight out, and we're going to mess you up good. You ready?
We're so, you're not children anymore. All of you are pretty old.
What would be the answer to that, Erodi? Well, that's absolutely. I am home. I am at home. And as far as if they say, are you going to come back and visit again, say, well, don't know why not.
As soon as I save up enough money
You know,
to do
yes.
it.
As soon as things
That's how humans
are right, yeah.
In other words, you want them to think that you had, in other words, you don't want them to think that just because they want you to come home, that you can do it just at the drop of a hat, because they couldn't do it. You see what I'm saying? So whenever you're able to do it, you will. And that's how you want to do it.
But don't let them, before they start to pin you down on things, force the subject to change. Because otherwise you're going to have to buck heads with them. And what you don't want to do is buck heads with them unnecessarily. So before it gets sticky, and they say, well, I want to know when you're coming again. I'll send you the money. You've got to get out of that.
If they do say that, then say, okay, whenever I can, I'll let you know.
Yes, now that's an excellent answer.
It's just, what you want to do is be Mr. Diplomat and be very congenial, but you don't, if they start to get a little sticky with some of your, with some of the questions, say, oh, come on, let's talk about you for a while. Here we've been separated a long time, and tell me about old cousin Jane, or Uncle Mac, or whatever it is, and try to cheer them up in that way, but don't make it so obvious that you're trying to prevent them from, trying to not answer their question.
Right. You've got to know when it's more right to stop a series of inquiries and when it's more right to let them continue. If the questions are not putting you in any predicament and they are relieving their worst fears, then you can continue to answer questions as long as it's constructive. If it would help them think more positively, you see, as long as you're not giving away any security or giving details that they would not understand. Do you follow that? But then when they begin to pry, then it gets uncomfortable and you'll have to get the attention on Aunt Josie. Okay, Janet?
You mean if they ask when you're coming home?
Or just, like, and then answer, not very I am
Sure. Well, we're not asking you to answer the phrase that we gave you because we don't want pat phrases. Put on your list there, no pat answers. Because if you take what you write down there and you go back and say those very words exactly the same, and they're all, and notes are compared, it's going to really confuse them. And believe it or not, some of them will convince you that they aren't going to compare notes with anybody, but they certainly will the first chance they get, if they can. So, yes, you could say what you just said. And or other things that would satisfy about the same idea. Oh, Lodi? Okay, now wait a minute. We don't want to know all that. We want to know if you've got any questions. Well, see, here it's going to depend a little bit upon what they know and what they remember. And if they bring that up, I say, well, I hope so, and I hope it's soon. But I would say it in a way that, about like I just said it to you just now, because otherwise they think that you're too heavy and you're too serious about something that they may think is just a crazy idea. But you could even follow it up with, even though I would like to think that, and I hope that's the way it's going to happen, the important thing is that what I have put my efforts and my stake into is not that exit or the time of that exit, but in the way of life that I have found, that I have learned about. Sunodi? Sure.
You can change the subject. It's always good if you can do it without it being too obvious.
If they insist on something, and then you have to answer them in a way that will satisfy them. But you don't want to give them fuel for fire if what they're after is fire. Do you see what we're saying? Because you've got to recognize that and stay away from it.
It might make them feel better if they don't think you're going to. See what I'm saying? In other words,
therefore put the damper on it.
Right,
Yeah.
because if you're planning on staying around and build this garden here, or this world into a better place, they might feel better about your staying and doing what you're doing. But if they think you're going to leave and go off into space, which they feel like it isn't very right, then it's kind of frightening to them, because they will be losing
About the only way they could relate to that is that if you compared it to the rapture or to Jesus coming again and taking the chosen ones or the ones who believe, taking them to heaven and whatever kind of resurrection. This is just an interpretation of that same thing. That, do you believe you're going to heaven? Well, so do I. The only difference is I might know a little bit about the bus.
A lot of Baptists and Methodists, and I might go along with it. In other words, you're talking on two different levels.
That's right.
In other words, it isn't just for you all, because that sounds like you're fanatics. You know where you're going, right? And Baptists and Presbyterians and Methodists don't like that all. Think they know where they're going. But you're not going to the same place. See what I'm saying? But you can't explain that to your family.
No. And don't get in depth into UFOs with them, because
talk about a lab, and all that. Just
don't talk about the way the next level tends the garden and things like that. It just don't try to convince them from an intellectual point of view about some of the things that you know to be true. It'll just convince them all the more that you need help. So, Goody? That's a good question.
I don't think I would. I think shouldn't you wear the necklaces? I think this would be a time that you would pin it on the inside of your shirt or something, because they're going to look at it and say, "Oh, what is this? What does MK stand for? Is that your initials? You're using,
That's a good question. You certainly would let it be seen, and so if you take it with you, it has to be kept where it cannot be seen, like he said, pinned inside or something like that. Christody?
You have to try to go along with it.
You have to go along, but if they rush up and grab you and hug you and so forth, that doesn't mean you, with the same amount of energy, grab and hug back. But you keep your smile, you let them get it out of their system, and but they'll probably suspect that you're not quite as into hugging as they are, just from the way you feel. But you certainly wouldn't push them back and say, "Now wait a minute, I'm not into hugging." Randy Odie? No. Too sticky.
Doors.
Yeah,
they know where you came
that
from.
That sounds weird. That means you're coming back home. So you're trying to talk on another level, thinking that they will buy it at that level.
That you'll go back home.
That could sound suspicious.
Try to avoid that kind. There are some things you can talk on two levels, but I'm afraid that might not be the right thing to say.
Didn't feel right. Glenn Odie?
I want to make sure I understand the impression. Say what part of the concept.
That doesn't mean that you can't use the term group once in a while appropriately, like the group that I live with. If they ask you a question, you had to answer that way, or the ones that I live with. But we're trying to just get it away from the category of group. But when word group is appropriate, that doesn't mean that you can't use that term. Go ahead with your question. That is very important, and and we didn't carry that quite far enough when it was brought up a few minutes ago about we're in more than one town and in more than one house. And what are you going to say if they say you live in campgrounds, you live in houses? Yes. We want them to think that you are out of campgrounds and we live in houses, very nice houses. I'll ask you a question. It's loaded. Can you, in the circumstance that you're in, I'm them asking you a question. In the circumstance that you're in, can you just, go down the store when you want to and have a Coke, or go to the library when you want to, or just take off and go to church service, or go out and have a date with somebody, or, can you do what you want to when you want to? What do you say, Glenn? Absolutely. Yes, I can. I can do whatever. The door's not locked. And that's always a good answer to such a question as that. And you are free to do that if you want to. You're free to do whatever you want to. That's right. It doesn't mean you'll stay in the class, but you're free to do it. Can you hear okay? Okay. Let's see. There were Sam Luddy. What might happen when you come back there? What does your parents say? You're visiting Walker. You'd be able to call other relatives. You bet. Or friends that have been staying in contact with you. Sure. Do it. The more you can get that out of the way while you're there, the better off you are. The more calls you can make and chatting on the telephone, because we'd like for you not to return, and then all these who you missed that you didn't visit with feel like, why did he go there and he didn't come here, or he didn't call me? And this, unfortunately, if we do go through with this task, you can only go one place, at least for now. And so it's going to be your decision as to where that place is. But while you're there, the more opportunity you can get all this out of your system. So when you get back to the class, you won't feel like there were a lot of loose ends. So if they say, call your sister and call your brother and call Aunt so-and-so and call while you're here, then do it. The more the better. Even if you feel like you should bring some of those calls to their attention and make them fine, it's an excellent time to do it.
Let me ask you another question.
Okay.
What if they ask you, did your teachers tell you that your family was saint to you? What would you say? Okay.
Do you have something to add to that?
So why is it they won't let you, why have they kept you from it? Well, then why did you stay away? Okay, and what else?
Now, some of you can't say that.
Something else, too, before I forget it. You could say, I guess I was afraid that you would stop me from doing this.
That you would try to stop me.
You would try to
And it was too important to me to take that chance.
That again is just only a suggestion to give you an idea how to respond. We're not saying that all of you have to say it in that way. It's
true that a long time ago when you were in campgrounds, we referred to anything that would entice you to stop the class. Anything that was still a draw to have you stop the class was your Satan in our terminology. But it's not the same terminology. Therefore, like some of these movies that about cults and things, nearly all these movies that they might have seen say that the groups teach them that their families are Satan. So, and to us, that's a horrible thing. And it's a horrible thing for them to have to feel that you're being put in that kind of situation. So if that question does come to you, then try to answer it the way that was just mentioned. And Dodie, did you want to add to that? Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good answer. That's a good response.
But if they demand an answer, you know, they have to feel some way, Dodie, about it, because otherwise,
They
why
wouldn't
were
have
you so separate from them?
That's right.
Why didn't you make contact with them? You see what I'm saying? And
nearly all of them are going to ask, why were you gone this long without getting back in touch with me? Sunodi? Sounds good. Sounds like a good answer.
See, you can think about your relationship to your family and how to handle the circumstances.
What they would buy knowing you. See, they might remember a certain kind of individual there that they wouldn't be too surprised to hear that kind of response from. You see what we're saying? And therefore the response would be appropriate. But some of you cannot say to certain individuals the answers that others could, because some of them will not be able to take it, where others could take it more easily.
What if they wouldn't let you come back? Ariane? Right. In other words, you would say, well, I better let them know that I'm not, somebody knows that I won't be coming back. And so they won't worry about it.
Well, I don't know that he ought to tell them that. He could just do it.
Okay,
because if he tells them, they're going to want to monitor the phone call and so forth.
Well, that's true. So what you do is say, okay, but then try to get away and call us and let us know. And what you'll do is just stay there and pretend like you're the perfect little son and drive them crazy.
Which the perfect little son would do,
and
you know.
Until they say, why don't you go out and get a job?
Okay.
What are you going to do? You say, okay, I think I'll, and then pack up your things and say, I think I'll go and someplace, you know. And in other words, it may make them happy to know that you're not with them. And once they know that, then whatever, if that's what they demand.
If necessary, right. We're saying if this is necessary.
The last resort. But we don't want you to go there with the idea that you're going to tell them that you're not with us.
Do your teachers live with you? What's your answer to that? Sorry. They don't live with you? Heaven's sakes. Okay. And Dodie, you have a question?
Receive it once in a while?
Sure.
Which is the truth.
Yeah, that's right. Sayoni?
No, you don't have to go
Don't
that
need
way.
to,
They want to
no.
know if you right now.
Okay. Just
I don't know about the next level.
unless they've read some of that literature, unless they've read statements or first of all, you wouldn't bring it up unless they pressed it. If they pressed it, if T agrees, and you have already shared that information with them, say, well, I certainly don't have any information to the contrary, and the evidence seems to show me that hasn't changed.
That is, if you feel that way.
Yes. Yes, if you don't feel that way, then just stay there and send us a card.
If you don't feel that way, just say, well, I think so, I don't know.
Now listen, before we forget it, one thing that unless things go, in other words, let's say that we plan for you to go on a Thursday night and you're coming back on a Saturday night or whatever it is, if anything causes that to be altered, then you want at the first opportunity to inform your craft of what is going on and that has been altered. And there's not even anything wrong with if at some moment during your visit the opportunity presents itself and you really feel like you need to hear the voice of someone in your craft. For a moment there would be nothing wrong with calling. Now, if T says that's okay. Now, we will give you an access number, telephone access number, Sprint number to the town where you are in so that you can call using Sprint. If there is no access number in that town, then of course you call collect to the craft, but you certainly do not put any calls to this town on telephone bills. Everybody clear about that? Okay. Dan Cuddy? What does that mean?
Well, like, without the citizens eventually, like we do, people can call, well, if it's going to this, well, the best way to keep them to have people to not be in contact with self. In other words, the forces could also use somebody or relatives, I guess, back to be in contact.
Well, see, you can't talk about the forces, Teddy, and you can't talk about the forces could use them to get us to come back. That sounds like that puts them in the wrong place. They couldn't begin to understand that.
They may think that was just what we told you in order to keep you away from your family, because in their mind they can't figure out what would cause them any trouble.
The only really legitimate answers that we can think of, Sunodi had one that was okay, and that wouldn't necessarily fall in this category, and others of you may have okay ones that don't fall in these categories too, but the only ones that in general we can think of are, I was afraid of interference, that I couldn't handle the emotional encounter with you, feeling like I should stop what I'm doing, and because I wanted to do what I was doing. And I really regret that it had to be this way. In a sense, you want to apologize for the fact that it has been so long. But you saw no other way. There was no alternative at the time for this. I can't really think of too many things that would be more true and more right. And let's face it, the reason that you couldn't have been in contact with, because their demand, or the prospect of their demand that you stop what you're doing, would have just thrown such a kink in where you were at the time that it would have been very hard to keep your head on your studies the way they belonged. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's nothing false about that statement. It's a very true statement. And it's very true that, in a sense, since you're taking your vehicle back to where the vehicle had ties, that you can, in honesty, let the vehicle say, I regret that it had to be this way. Because you are regretting it from their standpoint. You're not regretting it from yours. We regret it. We regret that they had to experience the agony that they had to experience in the fact they did not hear from you for such a distance, for such a long time. However, we also know that that could have done them a favor in a lot of growth in the right direction. Should they, or if they had chosen to accept that experience for growth. You'll find that you might be surprised at how many of you will go home to, not home, but go into the place where the vehicle's home was, and you might find considerably more religious-oriented folks than you left, or in some way religious-oriented, because they may have turned that way in order to have consolation because of your absence. Now, you might very well be prepared for, you might find bitterness there, and they may just want to spit it out and get it out of their system and then go cry and then come back and apologize. And be tolerant for that if that's what they have to do. They might get some things off their chest at one night or the first night you're there that they were just dying to say, that's just the ugliest thing they could get out to say, and the next day their tone might be completely different. And permit them that. Don't draw any fast conclusions that bitterness will remain, because give it a chance to resolve itself, because they're expressing their hurt, in a sense. If this is what they do, most of them probably have gotten past doing this. Some might still be bitter to the point that they don't want to see you. And if that's the case, then just call the craft and say, I think I'll be coming back a day early.
But you want to, if they do lash out at you, like Doug said, then you can feel very badly about it and say, I can understand how you feel.
Yes.
And I probably deserve to be treated this way.
That's right. It would not do you any harm. It would not do you any harm to take that response of theirs and say, I can just like Keith said, I can certainly understand why you feel that way, and I feel very regretful that things have had to cause you to feel.
And but maybe the future won't be so bad.
Yes. You can give them some hope. You can't give them any promises, but you can give them some hope.
Now, anyone...
Now, don't you say that to them. Don't you say, I can give you some hope, but I can't give you any promise.
If any of you feel like you don't want to go home, believe it or not, no one's going to be made to go back.
No.
Okay? So if any of you feel like you don't have anybody to go to, or you feel like it would be a big problem, more than what you can handle, then just let us know, because we're not going to quit. That is, if we get to go ahead. We're still in the talking stage.
We're still playing the game.
So,
and if you play the game and you get there and you decide you want to stay, just let us know. Okay? Olive? Nothing wrong with that as long as you say it in a way that you say, I gave them up because I wanted to put my energy into it. But if you say, I gave them up, and they think because you were told to give them up. And see, they think, many of them may think that you are very weak, or you couldn't have been conned. Either that, or they think that, master mesmerism people have really gotten some kind of glory out of having you under their spell. So, and they can't help but think this. This is, what else are they going to think?
they don't know that what you're doing.
And the funny thing is, you're very strong. You're extremely extremely strong. You're stronger than any one of them could ever imagine being, because of what you have experienced and what you have disciplined yourself to, and the control you have disciplined yourself to.
Can that line be closed there at the end? Don't you say?
I guess you like it.
Be blind as one eye.
Glenody?
I don't see how they can help but be proud of you.
We feel that way too. We feel that without keep yourself under control. Don't let yourself get where you become shaky in this circumstance just because of the intensity of it. You have the strength to remain above it and to remain mature throughout it. And the funny thing is, you may fear prior to the encounter losing the control. But I believe the moment you're in their presence and you see where they are and know where you are, that your control will return immediately. Do you understand what we're saying? Because you'll realize the difference there between what your experience in the past few years, where it has taken you, and where they are. I'm not putting them down, but and what I'm trying to do is tell you that you really don't have any reason to fear the encounter, because you're a great deal stronger and have a grasp on things a lot more than you might give yourself credit for.
Now, what you want to do is, we talked to the retreat people about this earlier today. When you go to retreat, or when you're in this craft, all of you have been a couple of times, right, or 3 times, on 3 different times. Is that not right? Haven't you all, or have you all been?
I don't think they've all been the third time.
2, third time, okay. In other words, you have been taught how to, or we're beginning to teach you how to handle things according to the way members of the next level do it, right?
Priorities.
And like you're going out like you've gone to Galveston and you've gone to Nancy, right? And so we've given you things to do, and then you all handle them according to the few instructions that you have. Now, when you're handling them the way a member of the next level would do it, your mind is trying to do it the way that you think a member of the next level would do it. Okay? Sounds like I'm repeating it. But, and your brain, the brain of the vehicle, excuse me, is only going along for the ride. Can you understand this? So what you're trying to do is keep your mind, you want to keep an intensity, your mind